All right. I think we are live here. Yes, we're live there. Now I got to do the look arounds. So we're live everywhere. Right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
My YouTube notification.
One. Oh, yep. We're live on LinkedIn too. Okay.
I can hear
Yeah.
me. The delay. Yeah.
All right.
So now you know how you sound.
I can hear.
Good. Well, hello to everybody who's here early. We're 10 minutes away from the beginning of this SiegeCast. Same hack, different day with Brandon Scholet and Jason Downey. With us, we have our what is the title, Molly? Is a project manager, executive, owner? What are you now?
All of it.
Yeah, you're all the things. Molly is the person that if you contact Red Siege, you're going to be dealing with Molly, and she's fantastic. So if you want to work with us, you're gonna get to talk to her. Molly has potato cam. Well, it's I think a signal thing. It's not really her fault. Yeah, the more you move, the more muddier your camera's. You just stay.
The pixels are
hello, Culling in YouTube. Is there anybody from the LinkedIn's? Are you here? You let us know. I don't think that it's not giving me the numbers for LinkedIn. This is live on LinkedIn, right? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Yes, yeah. Am I right? Yeah.
I have like my my new setup here, right? And so like my extra monitor. So when I turn to look at my notes, my face does this. So it's gonna be could be a lot of that.
You could do one of those AI things that makes your eyes always look at the camera, except when you go sideways.
If you do that, I will literally kick you off the camera. I think that is I don't know who at NVIDIA thought that was what people needed, but that wasn't it. All right, so we got a Heya over in Twitch world with White Cyberduck. We got a afternoon from Jordan McGee and Loud and Clear from Quincy. So yeah, we're rocking and rolling. I want to see the recording. I'll be in a lame meeting. Okay, hey, don't worry. I usually put these things up not a couple days after, so don't worry. It'll be up there. You'll miss this part and whatever happens after the end. But the content, the thing you're here for, that will be here. So
I'm just here for the pre-show. I don't know about you.
You're just gonna bounce out as soon as it starts. Jason's gonna be like, so.
Yeah. Molly will carry it. Well, she'll be fine.
Just give Molly Brandon's notes and just see what she does with them.
That would be an interesting SiegeCast to do.
Yeah. We should do that. We should have everybody write a SiegeCast for someone else they have to perform it.
So at cons sometimes they do something that's like whose slide is it anyways or whatever, and basically you go up there and give a presentation to the class, but you have never seen the slides before. So the slides could be like about penguins or something, and next thing you know, there's like 5 bullet points about penguins, and you got to give this presentation to a group of people. Right? It's funny.
For the person who asked, is there any way to get notification LinkedIn when you go live? There is. When we put the lives up on LinkedIn, you can add to calendar. That's an option on the events. We put the events up there just like we put them everywhere else. But again, if you're in the Discord, if you're in the Twitter, we're pretty much talking about them all the time, so you don't have to worry about that. But you can get a calendar invite from LinkedIn specifically. Put Brandon in the hat, please. What is the hat? Or are you talking about the helmet? I wonder if that's what he means.
That
is that the helmet? The best photo that Red Siege has?
I got it into a pen test report last week. It's in there twice. It was beautiful. I should show you that report. I had a profile picture to upload for a web app we were testing, and it was the first thing I could upload from my downloads folder on my Android emulator. So when I discovered access to all uploaded files from the client, there was that picture, and so now it's in the report. That's a finding right there. It's beautiful.
That's funny.
If you're wondering what picture we're talking about, if you go to redsiege.com/meettheteam, I have my beautiful company photo courtesy of JCon.
Josiah, I think you saw for the Discord issue that we all have, which is we all love Discords, but we mute every one of them. So unless you go into the Discord, you won't know the information. So again, but in there though, you can get a calendar invites. I put events for every one of them. You can just get the invite, get it on the calendar. So multiple places to find them. So yeah, there's many places to find an invite. There's no other way to put that. There's plenty of places to get an invite. I have something here that says LinkedIn user, but I don't see who that person is. I think that's
That's their name.
It's just LinkedIn user.
Yep.
Hello. Hope you're doing well. We hope you're doing well. I appreciate you joining us here for this SiegeCast. Same hack, different day with our Red Siege consultants, Brandon Scholet and Jason Downey.
I'm actually really glad you said his last name out loud twice, because I don't think I knew how to pronounce it before
Really?
like 6 minutes ago. Yeah.
No.
Huh.
What were
You
you
just
thinking in
get,
your
like,
head? Scholet?
How are you gonna
Yeah, like
pronounce
Scholet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just say Olay or show me Olay. Cholet.
Cholet.
I
Now
think of
know.
Bob Goulet, and that's how I never forget it. So
I used to get people doing the Olay 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 song as I was a kid.
it's terrible.
Or like the German chant, and there's also the like Hawaiian Cholet Olay. Yeah, that's my
At least you got-
sister's.
yeah.
That's my
Yeah, is that
sister's
Hawaiian?
name.
Song. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
That's
my
Miami,
sister.
isn't it? Is it
I don't-
feeling
I don't
hot,
know.
hot?
Sure, yeah, I don't know. It was my sister's AIM account name, so
Oh, okay.
that shows how much we heard that growing up.
That makes sense. So you gentlemen, I don't believe you have any links per se. I haven't gotten much, but if they do decide to post something, you can always go into the Discord, redsiege.com/Discord. We have people have conversations in there. The conversation will continue in there after the Discord, as well as we have any links that get posted. I post them in the webcast section. You can find those and links from previous webcasts all inside the webcast section as well. So if you do want to find any links that may get dropped here, that's going to be the spot we're dropping them.
And if anyone makes a meme from this chat, the best meme, Jay Con will send you a hat.
Oh, there you go. There it is. It's been decreed, therefore it is live. So yeah, best meme of this SiegeCast gets a hat. So there you go, people.
That's way better than to pick a number between 1 and 1,000, and whoever gets it.
That's the one that we.
Is that what Tim did, or?
Yeah, that's what Tim did. He was like, "All right, we can't think of a question, so pick a number between 1 and 1,000," and it was just numbers. So yeah, that was a fun day.
Yeah.
At least low effort memes take like a little bit of effort.
Wasn't aware of the Discord. Yeah, you can always find, there's access to all of us here on the Red Siege team, redsiege.com/Discord. Plenty of different things in there. We got different sections for different things being talked about. When we do our CTFs and our challenges, you can find them in there as well. Pretty much we use that as our main tool to work with the community and the people that it's a pretty fun group. A lot of people in there. I love a lot of fun things happen. A lot of good information gets sent around. So yeah, if you're looking for a Discord that isn't totally full of, nonsense, jump on in there. You're going to mute it anyway, but feel free to jump on in there. Meme challenge accepted. Look, hey, I'm saying it has been decreed, so we'll have to see what happens. Now, if one person does a meme, one person gets a hat. We'll see what happens.
Are we gonna do like a deadline? Like you got to submit it no more than like 30 minutes after.
You have to submit it before the end of the final graphic. When this SiegeCast ends, these boys are going to say goodbye and then the graphic. We're going to stay on afterwards. Don't just leave, because we're going to come on after that. But these guys are going to end the SiegeCast, and whoever's got the best meme of this by the end is going to get a hat.
Yeah. Yep. Throw it in the live chat on the Discord. Probably the best place to get them all in one
Tim's here
spot.
just in time.
Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
How's it going? What the?
Yeah, your focus is all messed up.
No, focus is fine. Well, actually,
No, it's not.
Are you on camera number 6?
no, it's. Dang it.
Hello.
There you go.
Got this. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Hello. Through your best stickers and memes. Hello. I'm so excited for everybody to be here. Who else we got here? Taryn Downey in the house, representing.
Yeah, that would be my sister. And see how we don't have plural last names like you do?
Look, man, you blame Ellis
Jason
Island. Don't
Downey.
come at me, all right?
Weird. Why is that showing up as bright red?
What's right, red?
Do you see me or no? I see like a.
No, we see you. You look fine. You're just out of
see you.
focus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the camera just set it to do this.
Yeah.
You do look a bit twitchy.
Yeah, it's weird because on the screen that I see in here in StreamYard, it's just a red blob.
Oh no, you're fine here. I see you. You're just out of focus. It's focused all in your background.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so Brandon has decreed that I have to give a hat to whoever sends the best meme in the Discord. So that's happening.
Nice.
I have a feeling.
Sounds great. And he just walks away.
See you later, guys. Have a good SiegeCast. Tim, out.
Well, this SiegeCast brought to you by Tim's Empty Chair.
Yeah.
Well, we're already here at the 3 p.m. thing, so I want to say again, if you're looking for any of the links that get shared, you can go into the Discord, redsiege.com/Discord. I usually post them all in the webcast section, but if you have any other things you want to add to it, you can post them in the live chat or paying attention to all of that during this. If you have any questions, post them there, and we'll feed them to the guys. If you have any questions on the YouTube or the Twitch, you can throw them there. We'll also feed them. But these guys are going to start with the first SiegeCast of 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Same Hack, Different Day.
You know, I still stand firmly that like the intro is the best part about all of these. Like it's this epic intro always happens, and then I have to give a talk, which is just like average, right?
Yep. We're too over branded. We need to tell JCon to cut
Yeah.
it back a little bit.
Yeah, like our content is like way above what we are as people. We gotta roll that back. But yeah,
Yeah.
hi everybody. Yep, I am Jason Downey. You guys have seen me before. I'm a security consultant here at Red Siege, and not new to pen testing, but new to Red Siege is the
Brandon Scholet. I'm this way.
Which way? Which way?
Yeah, this is my first SiegeCast. If you've been on the Wednesday Offensive, I've been around at Red Siege for about 4 or 5 months, and I'm glad to speak with Mr. Jason Downey about Same Hack, Different Day. So yeah, mainly we wanted to come on and talk about what we had a lot of success with in the last year, what things we saw and what we kind of expect to use again this year, and then sort of some new stuff we discovered last year that we think will also be successful. Now, if you're a seasoned pen tester, you won't know all these. You're going to be bored. I'm sorry, but this is for everyone else.
Yep.
So, Jason.
Sure. Yeah, and it's really about like, sort of the lots of trends that we've seen over the last year, right? And definitely as we've added some new members this year, like they've brought some pretty cool techniques with them, and really just kind of, elevate all of our games. Looking forward to pushing a lot of stuff in the next year, like you said. So yeah, I guess let's dive right in. So if we talk about, the natural flow of pen testing, right? We live with sort of like, on the OSINT and external side first. Like, so we're going to sort of focus on that area to begin with. And one of the things that, every time I do any kind of talk, I talk about password spraying. And over the last year, on all of my externals, one of the ways that I was able to jump that perimeter and turn an external pen test into an internal pen test is literally via password spraying. Specifically, I've been using a tool called CredMaster, and I really should have given JCon the link for that. But CredMaster has been a pretty cool tool that I've started using this year and plan on continuing next year. So what CredMaster does is obviously does a password spray, but it's got a built-in utility called FireProx. And what FireProx does is it uses like an Amazon gateway, and it rotates IP addresses. So what defenders see is like 10 different IP addresses, trying to log in instead of just coming from you. So while they're playing whack-a-mole trying to stop you, we're continuing to spray and get access that way. And it's worked really, really well on our external engagements, and I'm definitely looking forward to keeping that going.
Yeah, with that via MSOL, we're able to verify usernames that we got through OSINT, and then with passwords, we can test those, and you'd be surprised how many valid users we'll be able to find, or how many valid passwords if we can find, just based on quick searches based on the company's name or hiring lists that we can pull. The setup is a bit complex, but once it's in place, it's fairly regular to just keep going at it.
Yeah, it's like unfortunately, like the days of finding some, well, not 100%, but finding some vulnerable piece of software that's external facing that we can just, pop and go in that way. The truth is, if you have something vulnerable that's facing the internet, somebody's probably already found it and popped it and already has access to you internally. And by the time you hire us, it's too late, right? So yeah, we rely on like those techniques a lot.
With things like Shodan or Google dorking, your specific version of your firewall, the moment there becomes a 0-day, someone will go to Shodan, they will put in your firewall name, and they will get a list of IPs, which includes yours, and they will send that 0-day code against yours. So that's why, defense in depth, that's why, isolating your perimeter is important. And having those web proxies, even if you're going to self-host.
Sure.
So speaking of exposed services, you need to be scanning what you have, looking at your IPs, looking at your ports. If you are hosting a web server, you should be looking at all the endpoints that you're hosting. Pull out a list, use loop through it, see what you can access via internal, external. There might be comments in the page that someone who's unauthenticated shouldn't be able to see, that gains them further intel into the functionality of your site or how it's working. People who are unauthenticated should only get resources that they're supposed to get.
Right. And that's something that, especially if you have like a mid to large size organization, you as a security person should be scanning your perimeter regularly, right? Because everything on January 1st might be great and might be within, whatever gold standard you have at your enterprise. But if a developer puts something new out to the internet and, opens up some port that shouldn't be there and you find out too late, then so be sure to audit regularly, because scanning is something that attackers are doing all the time. It's the first thing that we do on every network style pen test.
Yeah. And also, get into some defensive tooling. Don't just use defenders tools. Use the tools that the attacker's going to use. Use things off of download Kali Linux. Start with Nessus. That's a good one, or another scanner. And with that, feeding everything into an asset management program can give you some valuable layout as to what can be audited externally. So if you aren't managing your assets or tracking all the software versions and all the ports that are available on your servers, and you are a public facing service company, you probably need to get with that.
Agreed. And so, so you had showed me, I know we jumped around a little bit, but you had showed me a really cool tool when you started. And one of the things that we are using to access those exposed services, right? Why don't you tell us about that tool and what hotness it finds for us?
Which one? Truffle Hog?
Truffle Hog?
Or,
yeah.
Okay. Sorry. There's a lot. I show you so many things. All the tools I show you are cool, Jason.
It's true.
So Truffle Hog, if you are an organization that has an organization on GitHub, it's a tool that will go through, pull every repository that's public, pull every commit, and look through for sensitive strings, passwords, going back to even the earliest commits, which may have hard-coded credentials or JDBC connection strings, and we will use that to get more lay of the land, figure out where your servers are. That is an invaluable tool. It's easy to run, and all you have to do is provide it the org name. It's a Docker. It's very simple. I don't know if someone could pass JCon the link for that. That'd be great. So, and then if there is not a public organization and it's just a repo, when we're doing OSINT or open source intelligence, we will even look for people whose email is that company. So if you are working at example.com, I'm going to look for anyone who has that as a profile name or in their profile, look through all of their different projects they have for keywords, and then I'll use a tool called Get Secrets. And Get Secrets allows us to do essentially the same thing as Truffle Hog, but on an individual repo. And you can use Truffle Hog for things that aren't just GitHub. I know there's different AWS options, but I haven't had as much need to go down that way. So speaking of another way to get passwords, our favorite one, seems like a lot of people's favorite one, is the hash. Do you want to go into that, Jason?
Yeah, so what Dhash is sort of like a repository of credentials that have leaked out, on the internet from some way, shape, or fashion. Dark web posts or people selling or do what have you. Dhash just goes through and they gather all that stuff up for us, and we just pay a simple subscription, and we can get access to all of those. That the collaboration of all those password dumps put in one spot, because in addition to password spraying, we're also doing what's called credential stuffing, right? And credential stuffing is basically like focused password spraying, where we are taking known valid credentials and attempting to like log in with it. And we can use that a lot of times too to see trends. So like, for example, if Red Siege had 1,000 employees and they were logging in and stuff, we had a bad password policy, and we access one of these password dumps and we see like Red Siege, help 1, Red Siege help 2022, right? A bunch of different iterations of that. We can kind of make the guess that, maybe the help desk is doing like password resets and they have sort of a default format that they're using. So if we know that a breach came out in 2021 and a bunch of passwords say Red Siege 2021, we can bet that probably Red Siege 2023 is going to work this year, right? So we could take those known password dumps and look at trends and be able to use that for credential stuffing.
Yeah, and if you work at nunchuck.com and I see that your password was nunchuck1 exclamation point, the next year I'm probably going to do nunchuck2 at, or if it's been a couple of years, I'll keyboard walk through that, because that is generally what we're going to find with those password trends. So with that, one of the easiest solutions for that, there's two that are kind of recommended right now. If you're on a hybrid Azure environment, you can use Azure's password solution, and you can provide company terms or product terms, and anyone who tries to submit a password to the domain controller with those terms in them will be rejected, as of course with commonly breached passwords, or it'll go through all of that. And then if you are not using an Azure hybrid environment, you can use custom DLLs pushed out by group policy for password changes, and that'll allow you to, I know a common one that gets used is Have I Been Owned? It's a great website to look for your personal stuff, but on the business end, you can check if that password is indexed on Have I Been Owned. It'll send a hashed version of it before it allow the person to change the password, which is great if, not if your company's password has been leaked before, but it'll help identify that that is a known leaked password in existence. So just, layering what you can do, you would be surprised how sneaky users can be with how terrible their passwords are. For all you try, you have to keep on top of them. So yeah, and if you are a bigger company and it's worth the investment, you should get, dehashed, and you should start looking through for any dumps. A lot of the times we'll find someone will put their company email on LinkedIn, or they'll put it on their fitness tracker. And when the fitness tracker's password gets dumped, which has happened, you'll see that user's email, and for some reason, people will share the same password and email on their fitness tracker as they do on their corporate account. So once those have been dumped, proactively force reset the password for the user. Put that in the password policy about acceptable use for the company email, because that's just going to give us a bigger landscape to try and guess who and what and how we can get into your environment. So I think, sorry, go ahead.
So, yeah, you touched on a couple of cool points there, right? We talk about, we always hear the terms like defense in depth, and wow, as my train of thought completely derails. You talk about defensive depth, and basically, right, you can have a good password policy, but users are going to try to find a way to make that, as simple as possible, to circumvent. Just because our brains, like we want to be lazy, we want to do things the easiest way possible, and sometimes that leads to things like trends of passwords. So having, you mentioned like having those as your controls for blocking and whatnot. Like, we should have those implemented as well. That way, we can, keep users safe, and not with more than one solution at a time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Having a nice password storage solution, like an authentication app like 1Password or Bitwarden, having it so that your users don't get password fatigue, just giving them 1 or 2 passwords they have to remember. And of course, the NIST recommendations have changed. You don't need to change the password every 90 days. Help your users help you. So just kind of to finish up the open source intelligence OSINT stuff, we cloud buckets. If you are hosting your websites and you have images or files that are stored in S3 buckets or Azure storage buckets, ensure the security of those. Not just the buckets, but the files. If someone is able to brute force and get through the file names, can they access stuff that they're not supposed to see? Are your buckets named with the company name? A lot of people think that they're obscure enough that people aren't going to try and do that, but there are very easy word lists that allow us to tack on dev and prod and things to your company name to try and search for files. And then with Azure, a lot of the bucket security configurations are confusing, to say the least, to users, such as blob or container storage. And people will inadvertently allow access to their folder or a folder of company information that should be protected, instead of actually appropriately securing it and locking it down. So there's a lot, but you just have to see any external resource that you have. You need to keep in mind, because we're looking for needles in a haystack, but you need to know what's in your haystack before we do. Or people who will actually cause you harm, because we're just going to write a report and you're going to like it, or else.
Yep.
So moving on to internal. So after we get internal, or if we're doing an assumed breach or an internal engagement, or someone plugs in a USB drive, or I walk up to your dealership and I see your modem sitting right there and plug something in, we move to internal.
Yep.
So first thing is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll say, yeah, you're exactly right, because there's a million ways that we can jump that external, whether we fished our way in, or phone calls, or you hired us to do that engagement. That's where we started, right? And we talk about some of the simple stuff, that low-hanging fruit, right? Like, we're immediately going to start looking for, what appliances do you have on your network, and where are their default credentials? Like, who stood something up that we can just log into with admin? It's mildly scary how many times that we do internal engagements and find appliances that have some sort of hard-coded credentials or default logins that we can then use to move laterally or escalate privileges or whatnot. So be mindful that no matter, just because something is internal, if it can be accessed by your production environment, it needs to be locked down.
Yep.
Because assuming that a malicious person or some user doesn't know the IP address and therefore they won't find it is not enough.
Yep. I mean, and for people who say, well, we have port security or we block egress, a lot of the times, if we're doing a physical engagement, we're going to have a small computer like a Raspberry Pi with 2 ports on it. We'll unplug your TV or your small computer. We'll plug in our device and plug in the other. We'll port bend traffic through it, or and then for external communications, we can set the default route out through mobile, so that we can have it call back and send back. So starting off, there will be no communications. It'll look like your existing devices on the network, and then at that point, all we have to do is search, do queries. It's scary just how many assumptions about protecting your physical network are wrong. So it just takes someone that's motivated enough. Oh, and deactivate your open drops that in the walls where there aren't desks, because that one's
that one. Yep, I did that one this year. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So
yeah, and so real quick, so a good question came in. I think this is a good time to answer that real quick. So the question was, to suppose you have discovered a script or routine that the service desk uses for password reset. Is it ethical to nix that user's password to get that foothold? And because you talked about some of the things that we do physical, right? It's a good time to circle to that. Ultimately, the answer to that question is it is ethical if it's within your scope of work. Like, if your client says that, hey, yes, you can do this, because ultimately an attacker does not care about ethical. An attacker will do anything that they can to get access to your crown jewels, whatever they might be. We understand that if I'm doing a pen test on a hospital and they're like, hey, there's breathing machines hooked up here, you shouldn't scan that I probably shouldn't scan that. An attacker's not going to care, a real attacker. So yes, it is ethical. Make it happen however you want to make it happen.
Yeah, those things that are out of scope on your penetration test are not out of scope to, that bored Russian guy who wants to get a Lambo this year. So, make sure that you're, let's see.
That's it.
So one of the things that we'll do, and I know we're going to talk about it in a bit, but all of the hashed users' passwords for Active Directory are stored on the domain controller, and you can pull that using a domain administrator credential, and if you're able to pull it without it alerting on logging, that's an issue as well. But we use tools like secretsdump.py, or there, you could run Mimikatz if you whitelisted enough and your computer doesn't get, or your server doesn't get mad at you. But dumping those NTLM hashes off of the domain controllers and putting it up against a word list like RockU 2021, or generating a word list from your company name or company terms or location terms with rules. And if you do, if some of these things are a bit unheard of, I'm sure that we have documentation, or you can ask us about it, and we'll go into detail further later on. And then my personal favorite is, it's called RockU2021.txt. It's 92 gigabytes of passwords, or 7.3 trillion passwords, and I can run through that fairly quickly. So relatively quick, within hours or days, depending on the hash algorithm. So moving on with some of the internal stuff. Once we're in the network, either, depending on the scope of the engagement, listening quietly, you can see what traffic is there. Are there local requests? Are there, if you're on an assumed breach and you're on a server, what file shares are attached? What users can you see? Just getting the lay of the land is one of the big things. We will look for DNS. We will look for we'll look for everything we can find that is passive or normal communications before we start attacking. If we do get onto, say, a network device, that you could dump traffic and you could dump simple authentication, you could dump Kerberos tickets. But one of the big things that we have are file shares. You would be surprised how often file shares, and I think Joe Vest was talking, or was it who did we have on from TrustTheSec this week was talking about it as well. Almost all of the time that we find an escalation, there's going to be something in your file shares.
Yeah, our principal consultant Mike Saunders a lot of times refers to himself as a file archaeologist, because sometimes he's right. Like, we will spend several hours going through 200 shares on a network, because ultimately there's probably going to be a web.config file in there somewhere that's got some hard-coded creds in it that somebody is publicly sharing everywhere, or somebody's got some mid-level manager is going to have an Excel spreadsheet shared that's got whatever credentials they use for whatever systems, and we are absolutely going to look for that stuff. So will attackers. That's easy, low-hanging fruit.
Yep. And the amount of times that I've seen domain admin credentials in a backed up domain admins folder, there is no reason that any user should be able to access the archived copies of every user's folders. The amount of times I see this is unsettling, I would say, and also a little bit frustrating, because that just means a lot more that I have to look through on the file share, that it turns into a day of searching instead of hours. So, and I want to move on to doing the cool stuff like scanning and not just finding your passwords that are left there.
Yeah, and make us work for it, please.
Yeah. I mean, if you, I like actually exploiting, and it takes the wind out of my sails to have the password handed to me after hours of looking through files and email archives. So yeah, that goes back to auditing your own stuff. There should not be files named password.txt, password.xls, password.1. on your file shares. Users,
on your anywhere really.
anything.
Don't use that stuff anywhere.
Users desktops. Some people will password protect an XLS every once in a while. We could pull a hash of that, and then sometimes they don't protect that with a secure enough password. It'll be space or the letter A, and we will take that and we will crack the password on the we'll crack the password on the that file. We will gain all your credentials and we'll start using that, either looking for password trends or using your current password. And the amount of times that they are privileged is high. And so, that goes back to having a proper password solution for your users, like a password manager, having them use it, and, just, stating what expectations that you have. And relaying that, if the users don't care about, yeah, that is true. Yeah, having canary files, which are files that when opened cause detections. A lot of the times we'll see people will just put random canaries in the top level domains. Absolutely do this, and don't just have them be random strings. Name them really juicy terms, because that attacker is going to look at it, that pen tester is going to look at it, and then there's your notification. Having a root level folder on your password called administrators or network configs with, network spreadsheet passwords that fires off an email when you open it. Gotta love it. Canary Tools provides a free service that allows you to create any kind of tokens in your network, whether it's emails, DNS, commands. It is an absolutely crucial free resource. They do have paid stuff like actual machines, but yeah, you should definitely check them out. So going back to password spraying internally, if you want to talk about that, Jason.
Where's our list? Yeah, so as my train of thought derails again, right?
Seasons.
That's right. Yeah. So your seasons, so we talked about sort of identifying password trends and whatnot in previous stuff. But honestly, the gift that keeps on giving is season and year with an exclamation point at the end. So the idea of, winter 2023 exclamation point, I would almost guarantee we're going to get a success on that password spray, at some point in the next 2 months. And if we don't, we will hit a spring 2023 exclamation point or number sign. And when I start password spraying and I start looking for like those password trends and, from dumps, whatever, I always include, the season and date. So that's,
yep.
It's constant win for us.
Almost foolproof.
Yep. So, I know we talk about like finding passwords and on file shares and the trends that we see, but also we've got like some network stuff too, right? Like I know you got like some ways that we could dump Active Directory and network stuff you want to talk about.
Yep. Sure. Yeah. So one of the big things that attackers will try to do is dump the most crucial details of your network. Who has what permissions where? So Active Directory, your LDAP service. A lot of attackers will either use credentials they're found or they'll use the assumed breach to try and dump users, computers. You'll find tools like Azure Hound will do this for Azure, or SharpHound will do this for we'll do this for your regular domain. You should be tracking these dumping events. These dumps are massive, and you don't want to let someone take a dump in your network. These are very important details that allow attackers to map out your network. You should absolutely see when people are doing this, finding things such as their spins or SPNs, service principal names that are set in the network. Tim Medin, the inventor of Kerberoasting and our wonderful boss. If you've not heard the word Kerberoasting and Tim Medin in the same room, you haven't been in the same room as Tim Medin and Kerberoasting. That is a sorry, that's terrible. So it allows you, Kerberoasting is when you are looking for Kerberoastable accounts or accounts that you can get a ticket from the KDC and test for that, and the ticket will be hashed with the user's NTLM hash, or essentially you can password guess against their ticket. Kerberoasting, a lot of the times people will pull a wildcard of spins from your network, and that specifically is a thing that you can signature on. Instead of people, attackers are going to pull every SPN you have or spin. Your common user is only going to pull one at a time. So once we've pulled that, if you want to protect from Kerberoasting, those accounts need to have strong passwords, like 25 characters strong. Follow the best recommendations. That as rep roasting is somewhat along the same lines. If you have as rep roastable or Kerberoastable accounts, we still see it, but it's 2023. It's time for them to go or be secured. You should not have domain admins with guessable passwords putting essentially a hashed version of their password free for anyone on the network.
Yeah, and so a lot of those are, those are the network style attacks. Like there are ways that, we are, we're not necessarily connected to a single host and grabbing that stuff. We're doing like machine in the middle style attacks. So definitely protect yourself against that kind of stuff. Make sure SMB signing is completely enforced across your network, not just on your servers, on your workstations. If you've got a gold image, make sure that's the default setting. Because if we see that SMB signing is not enforced on any device, we're going to relay against it, and we're going to try all those really cool attacks that Brandon just talked about. If you are using, LLMNR and MBNS traffic, and you don't have any reason for it, you should turn it off, because we're gonna run responder, we're gonna exploit all that stuff. We're gonna use WPAD, web proxy auto discover, and we're gonna run these network style attacks, and we're gonna grab that stuff. So these legacy protocols, if you have no business use case for them, please disable them. And leave them on makes it easy for us, but for your sake, please turn that stuff off.
Yeah, and if you are not using IPv6, turn it off. Their IPv6 DNS overrides IPv4. We can actually set our attack box as the primary DNS server and relay all those DNS through it. It's only a 5-minute lease, but that could be pretty dangerous because we can send everything through us. And if you do not have signing, we can get the NetNTLM v2 hashes, which are also those encrypted users' passwords, and we can relay that to your internal certificate services. We can crack those passwords offline, though those do take a little bit. And if we're able to run an exploit like Petit Potom internally, which is a password, it's a coercion of the domain controller, and to have it call back, if that calls back with NTLM v1, we guaranteed have the NTLM v1 hash or NTLM hash of the domain controller, and we own your domain. So enforce NTLM v2, net NTLM v2. Stop. Patch your servers. Hide your kids, hide your servers.
Because we Kerberoast that here, right?
Yeah, and then also one thing is WPAD, web auto proxy. We can force computers to do all their web requests through us. WPAD is a bit detected more, but ensure that you're tracking that or disabling that as necessary. So kind of going back to how we get in, and something that Mr. Jason Downey is an expert at is phishing and social engineering. So if we do not have that internal access, how do we get in, Jason?
Well, just like you said, social engineering and phishing, right? So it's weird to say this after so many years of success, but phishing itself is actually getting harder. I feel like just running phishing engagements at this time, 2 years ago was a big win every time. But more and more enterprises are using multi-factor authentication. More and more enterprises are using secure email gateways that are blocking our phishes and doing whatever, which is really awesome for people in general. Not so awesome for us when we're trying to do social engineering attacks, right? So, one of the things that we've been, tooling really heavily, we saw a lot of success of in 2022, is I can never pronounce it right, but I'm pretty sure it's Evil Jinx. I tend to say Evil Jinx, but I think it's Evil Jinx. And what Evil Jinx does is allows you to capture session tokens. So if an enterprise has MFA enabled, you can steal that session token, and you don't have to do that MFA push in order to log into something. And it's really, really helpful for bypassing that stuff.
Yep.
So we use Evilgenix on a whole lot of our engagements, and it's pretty much attached to like every phishing campaign in one way or the other.
Yeah, the other one that I is my personal favorite is GoFish for replicating client sites. If you have an internal site, or if you have something that isn't a more regular. If you are hosting, say, a client portal, we will grab a web scrape of that. We will get the default email from registering. We'll make up a phishing pretext, and we will tell the users, hey, you need to log in. And once they've logged in, we will actually pass that connection back to the real server, and they may not realize what happens. And you'd be surprised how successful that can be. So let's see. And then
Yeah.
did you talk about phone calls? Something
I
that
did
you
not.
are the absolute master of?
Yeah, I did not talk about phone calls. So a lot of times, like, we as attackers, like, we talk about phishing. There's a ton of conversations out there, ton of talks, ton of resources that talk about phishing. I can't tell you how much success that I've had over the last year doing like actually picking up the phone and dialing numbers and then talking to somebody. I know, like, we as tech people are supposed to hate to do that. I absolutely love it, because there have been several instances over last year where I would call and I would pretend to be the help desk, and somebody way smarter than me, like Brandon, would write, some payload, right? And I would call this user and tell them to download and run this payload, and they just trust me and they do it. And now we've got access, and it took 15 minutes of my time. I literally robbed a bank this year over the phone, from where I called and talked to their help desk or not help desk, but talked to their customer service desk multiple times. And each time I could extract just a little bit extra information. And after like 25 or so phone calls, I had this whole list of information that made me sound like I knew what I was talking about, and I was able to extract some money, and that was pretty cool. So be mindful that a savvy attacker might do something similar. So when you're running social engineering engagements internally, don't just stop at phishing. Actually make some phone calls or hire someone externally to do that, and see what kind of information that they can dig up, because the people element is very exploitable, and it's something that works for us almost all the time.
So someone did ask about disabling IPv6. If you cannot disable it in your network, then ensure that you are setting an IPv6 server manually. If you have Linux devices or IoT devices in your network that are doing that local DNS resolution, or they have it set, look to see what configs you can change, turn off IPv6 in those. It's easy to do in Linux-based devices. If you need it on your server itself, then that's fine. But disable it if you don't need it, and manually set the IPv6 via group policy if you can.
And the network engineer cringes every time that I give the suggestion. My past network engineer, like, please segment your network. Like, I know it's a pain in the butt. I know it's a lot of overhead, but a lot of these networking attacks that we just talked about for the last 15 minutes can be completely wiped out if you just segment your network and put all your users in just one section. And ask yourself the question, should a user workstation ever talk directly to another user workstation? Is there ever a use case for that? The answer is probably no.
Or, a lot of people will segment their Cisco switches and routers off to a different VLAN. But are you doing that with your other management devices, such as your ILOs or your iDRACs, your hardware controllers? Would you be surprised that is actually a privesc to domain admin or control of domain controller? I've done it a few times in the last year. Some of my other coworkers have done it. You'll find that the ESXIs generally come shipped on the iDRACs or different VM platforms, and people will not change the passwords on the controllers, which essentially gives physical console access to these servers. And some of them, the default password is the serial number that is in the interface of the iDRAC or ILO, and that gives them SSH access to the ESXi, where they can clone a VM, they can pull out things, they can. One of the things that I'll do is you can packet dump directly on the guest. So if you are hosting a domain controller on that ESXi, I can password dump and get all the Kerberos tickets and the simple authentication to and from that domain controller. And then I have a domain admin password with only access to a single hardware device. And then with that, there's a medium rated exploit that people are generally familiar with called IPMI hash disclosure or IPMI. And it's a medium, but I can essentially query, I think it's port, I forget the port number, 623, I think. All I have to do is query that for hashes. It'll dump what the hashes are, and then I can crack those offline, and generally those will be default. So if you aren't using the default password on your ILO or iDRAC, we can get that password, crack the hash with a low computational requirement hash, and there you go. That medium becomes a critical. So don't always trust the criticality of your internal scanners because they don't take business risk into account.
And yeah, and I do want to highlight something too as well, like because you kind of mentioned it as like a medium, and really like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about so far, it's not necessarily mission critical. So like it's not necessarily you're going from 0 to domain admin, but a lot of times on these engagements, it's the first step in a chain, right? Like we do find a password, that on someone's, shared drive, and then we're able to log into something else. And then from there we can, run whatever, and then we can escalate. And then from there we can take our escalation point, and then we've got domain admin, right? Yeah, we definitely try to get that that layered security there to make sure that we can't go 0 to 1,000. But just because these aren't big deals by themselves don't mean they're not big deals, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's all about, as I said, needle and haystack or breadcrumbs. All we need are the right breadcrumbs, and we found your bread. So, or we found our way back to your domain controller. Ever play with IPMI services to hash dump? So yeah, that's actually what I was talking about with the IPMI hash dump. That is one of the few things that I will use Metasploit still for. Is it's really easy to do the IPMI hash dump via Metasploit, and it has the sample password list of common ILO or iDRAC passwords, and it'll actually say it'll dump the hashes and it'll say, hey, this one has root Calvin, which is the default password for iDRACs, or root, which is the password for ILOs. So that is probably one of my favorite ones that I'll pull up MSF console for still.
Yep.
So in interest of time, I want to kind of switch over to web, which is a large portion of what pen testers do. Sometimes people do just web, but that's a lot of people who provide a service have websites, and they may have a third-party developer that doesn't do secure coding. And one of the biggest things is not validating your inputs. Cross-site scripting. People are able to inject HTML code into your website. You should be filtering code as it comes into your API and filtering it as it leaves, not just one way. A lot of developers will have these controls that do content validation just in JavaScript. Well, we don't mess with it in the JavaScript. We're going to use a web proxy like Burp, or some people use Zap. And we'll take that and we'll manipulate that query using our common tool, the Burp Pro, do an active scan, and it'll take care of it for us. And it'll say, by the way, here's code execution. And some people will block script tags, or they'll block certain things, or they'll block spaces or parentheses. Like we've seen Cloudflare, their WAF will do that, but it will not protect against all HTML injection. So Portswigger has a cross-site scripting cheat sheet that allows you to try all different things to bypass restrictions. So one of my favorite ones is a video where it tries to load a fake video, and on error, it redirects to a different site. That one bypasses that WAF, and it also sends the cookies that are not protected. So I can send someone a link and get the cookies, log in as them using that, and then I have access as that client or as that administrator who that link has been sent to. People have been trying to protect for this, and it's just surprising how all these seem to be half measures. You really need to content validate in leaving and coming in, filtering, rendering those symbols as text instead of code. And then outdated libraries. Please track what libraries you're using. It's really easy to scan a website and see that the JavaScript you're using hasn't had a security update since 2015 and has cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Please do it. I'm tired of writing this finding. Just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
I put a note in here, right? Like, remember Log4j? Like that was like what, December 2021? Like, and think of how huge of a deal that was, because it was some library that someone hadn't updated in a couple years and someone finally found it, right? So be mindful of all those underlying infrastructure and make sure that it's gone and updated. I'll let you keep running. You're way smarter than me, Web. Keep running. I just had to throw that out there. Yeah.
That goes back to asset management. Know what you have. If you're using something like I was contracted to set up Exonius. If you go to cons, you might have seen it recently. It's pretty great. You feed in a couple inputs, and you've got a list of everything you have running on your web server, all the plugins, all the libraries, the versions. We had a client that when they got hit with that, they knew all the products that were using Log4j. Well, not all the ones that were unbundled because it was tricky and whatnot. But they were able to almost instantly detail which ones had it because they had an accurate listing of what software was Log4j, not Log4j.
We're both like too ADD to have notes and talk back and forth on a webcast.
Sorry, our wonderful leader Tim is distracting the two most distractible people in the company as we try to talk to each other. It's great. Anyways, scan your stuff, know what you have. So moving on to something that isn't a lost train of thought, IDOR. Indirect object reference. If you are storing things in your API calls as a number, and we see that, we are going to try all the numbers. We are going to see, if you're storing this person's social security form as ID number 6,000, I'm going to try 1 through 20,000. If you are deleting them, if it's a delete call, an update call, we're going to try and run through and see what access we have. We'll create 2 different logins. We'll test what can access from the other through site information. Ensure, run unit tests, see exactly what users can access from others, because that's one of the big things that we'll find that a scanner cannot, because that's business logic. That's the one thing about automated scanners, is they don't know your business logic. They don't understand the flow of your website, and they're just going to search for common vulnerabilities. So, ensure that you know who can access what, write unit tests for all the calls, and not just, that do the different parameters and client IDs. And speaking of different parameters, all of the things that can be sent in a header or a parameter, verify that they are resources that you're supposed to have. SSRF, or server-side request forgery, is a big one. If I tell you that the authentication service of the host is attacker.com and you send a request or send the cookies out, that's bad. You should not do that. We've had it where the authentication context for a website was from a SharePoint URL that was provided in the previous request. Validate your sources, validate your input, expect the unexpected. A lot of that stuff's going to be blind. Download a copy of Burp. If you are a web product, you should probably get, the tools that the attackers are using, which is Burp Suite Pro. Run an active scan. Use the Burp Collaborator, which is a free tool with Burp that allows you to test, what kind of leakages you have. And then WordPress. If you are using WordPress, pretty please, update it. Run plugins that update it. Check for patching. Yet again, asset management. There are plugins like WordPress Security or WP Scan that will tell you what you have vulnerable and send you emails. WordPress Security will also stop people from being able to scan your web page. If someone is sending the wrong requests to your website, you should block that IP. And that's all I want to talk about that, because that hurts too much.
Well, you see, I'm gonna throw one more out, because you talked about tools for outdated libraries, and you talked about plugins for scanning. you didn't mention your own tool, so you're too humble for that. So I'm going to do it for you. So Brandon wrote a tool called Wappy Bird. And what Wappy Bird was, it will allow you to load in a list of URLs. So if you are on a pen test and there's 50 websites, or if you're on the blue side and you're curious to know like what your software stack looks like for all of your web apps, download Wappy Bird and run it. It's easy. It spits it out. It's digestible. This has made my pen test life easier. So I'll brag for you. You can just have it. Brandon's the man. I just had to throw that out there.
So honestly, all it is a really nice wrapper for the Wappalizer. Someone made a Python Wappalizer, and the big thing is it just handles and checks for you can give it a scope of thousands of IPs. It's multi-threaded, and you just say, here's 6,000 IPs or ranges. Tell me what's on every one. Put it into a CSV so I can search for it. And I think it's 6,500 technologies now because it's pulling from the root Wappalizer. And you'd be surprised what you can find. If you're running things like Subfinder to find all the subdomains, or you have a list of your subdomains, check it. It'll actually show you via fingerprinting the website, and it's not very resource intensive because it's all regex based. It'll pull one copy of the website, it'll follow redirects, it'll follow meta redirects, and just check it out. It doesn't hurt anything to know what it can find, and it's interesting. But yeah, the only reason I don't reference it is because it's
your own.
All I did is make I don't know. All I did was make a library user friendly to be able to just put in stuff. So it's there. If anything sucks on it or you have an idea, let me know. I started making more features, and I didn't want feature bloat, so it's just simple. So yeah, that is our list of stuff that we have been using that has been successful. But I want to talk more about stuff that is new, stuff that hasn't been around for 5 years and you should have already fixed yet. This stuff is new. You may not have heard of it. We've been using it for a year, maybe a year and a half. But if you have not heard of it, here it is. The first, pissing off users. Go, Jason.
Yeah. So the new social engineering hotness is MFA bombing. So we understand that MFA is being put into everything, right? And so what that allows us as attackers to do is exploit something basically called like MFA fatigue, right? So if I've got credentials, but I don't have their MFA, token, login, whatever, you can just try to log in and send them a request. And chances are they'll see it at 3:00 in the afternoon and they're going to deny, right? They know that they didn't do that. But what happens if you send them 10 requests at 5:00 in the morning? Do you think maybe like on 7 or 8, they might be like, well, holy shit, or holy crap, I'm just going to accept this and hit yes, right? And then now you've got access. Goes back to that question earlier. Is it ethical? An attacker would do it. I would definitely ask before I did it to somebody, but I would definitely do it if I had to. MFA bombing works. We had it work on an engagement. I plan on doing that a whole lot next year. Like, forget all the technical means of trying to bypass and do whatever. Like, let's just blow a user up until they give it to us, right?
Yeah, I did not know that it worked until I saw that it worked, because I was like, no, there's no way someone's just going to click this if you send them enough requests. Apparently, it's a thing, and yeah, it works. So yeah, check that you can limit the amount of requests that can be sent to a website. So yeah, speaking of sending things, one of the things that we've been using recently is Microsoft Direct Send for phishing, which one of the big things about phishing is it's not just your email. You need to have the right IP. You need to have things seasoned, or you need to be using a sending service that is not going to head directly to their junk email box. So what do? You send things that have already been approved, already been vetted. One of my favorites is Amazon's SES, because if you block emails that are sent by Amazon, you're blocking way too many emails. It's going to have a high reputability for that IP address, so it'll probably get through. But the other is something that we haven't heard as much. So I'm going to let Jason talk about that while I go get some water.
Sure. Oh, he took his camera down and everything. Now I'm real big. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm definitely hitting on big this year, with sort of, phishing getting harder and whatnot, is I'm now looking at it takes a step away from direct send, but I'm making a point for next year that I'm looking at all of our customers' SPF, DMARC, and DCAM records, and I'm making sure that they are set up correctly, and I'm making sure that they're implemented properly. Because SPF isn't good enough anymore. Especially how Brandon mentioned with a lot of people using third-party email services. You've got to have DCAM and DMARC put on your external DNS records. That just goes so far above and beyond, to help protect you from someone impersonating you and running these phishing campaigns, either as you or against you, et cetera, et cetera. But for Microsoft Direct Send, so Microsoft Direct Send is designed to allow printers and whatnot to send emails inside of a trusted network. But if it's not configured properly, it can actually allow an attacker to spoof one of these internal emails and send it off to someone else internally. So you could use the campaign. Oh, I'm back now. Okay, there we go. I don't know how much that got lost, but if not configured correctly, Microsoft Direct Send allows an attacker to spoof a printer or spoof some other internal device. And so imagine if you're sitting at your desk, right, and you have some kind of fax to mail service, and you get one of those pop-ups. They're like, hey, here's someone sent you this fax. Click here to download this PDF, and it's actually a link to some malicious document. That's something that we can accomplish with Microsoft Direct Send. And so, a way to kind of prevent against that is be sure to route all of your incoming mail, and not just your external, but even internal to internal, needs to wrap back through whatever secure email gateway that you're using. Whether that's Proofpoint or one of the many other ones out there. Be sure that all that email is going back to that secure email gateway. So all that stuff is still getting scanned, even internal to internal email.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's only $5 too, right? Direct send.
Yeah.
$5-10.
Yeah. We set it up to try to pretend to use for maybe $5 is we found
so
account. Yep.
Yeah, that's fairly easy for someone that doesn't have to season anything to set up an account, set up this direct send, and then just start going, which is a lot lower of a technical complexity than say using a custom version of, I call it Evil Jinx, or Sneaky GoFish is a recompiled version of GoFish that blocks some of the, I don't call them canaries, but changes it just enough so it doesn't get detected. So off of phishing, Active Directory certificate services. A lot of people have seen this in the last year. If you haven't, go read the white paper. It's probably the first white paper that I've read 3 or 4 times. And it's hilarious because there's memes. SpectreOps always puts out wonderful content. But there were a series of vulnerabilities, I think ESC 1 through 8, and then now 9 and 10, where there are vulnerable things with your Active Directory certificate services. So there are user templates that, with different permissions, allow people to either request certificates, request templates, and some of these are, we call them boot to root, but these are they allow someone to say, hey, I'm the domain administrator, give me my certificate to then log in. That's bad. So you should run tools like Certify or Certify. Some of these will run through C2 or just run the binary itself. Get it, run it, pull all of your certificates that you have, put them maybe into Bloodhound. If you're doing Active Directory auditing, check out Bloodhound. It's free. It's awesome. You should be checking all the attack paths in Bloodhound anyways. I'm surprised we didn't talk about that. You should be using the tools that the attackers use. It's just commonplace for us, but
sure. Yeah.
Dump your Active Directory, use SharpHound, use Azure Hound, load it all in, start as your user, look for attack paths, go look up for Neo4j custom queries, do it all. Go to Bloodhound custom queries, add those custom ones, create your own, play, have fun, figure out what you can. Learning is free, and you'll better protect yourself, because time and time again we will find vulnerabilities with the Active Directory structure of a client. We'll tell them exactly what they need to do, what they need to remove, and they come back and they killed some attack paths, but everyone is still local admin to half the machines. So run through it. The common queries are great. It doesn't cost anything except some frustration setting up some Java prerequisites, or run the Docker. So do that. So back, I'm done with my bunny trails, back to Active Directory certificate services. Load those in there as well. There's a bunch of queries that you can append to your custom queries. There's also the HTTP enrollment server or ESC8. We can either coerce authentication from your domain controller. We can poison the user's things locally, and we can redirect that to the HTTP server to request and get the NTLM hash of that user. So not great. Check it out. And then another thing is we have generally when we have an internal assessment, we'll use tools like Kerberoot to do pre-authentication password spraying. Like Kerberos, you have those that are service principals that have their certificate available, but we can actually send a single UDP packet to test a valid login against Kerberos, and it'll be an entirely different error ID in your network. Generally, your SIMs or your SIEMs, however you pronounce it, your security interfaces will look for event 4625, which is a failed login, but it'll actually be 4771, which is Kerberos pre-authentication failed. So I will password spray, your spring 2021, your company name, one exclamation point, and I will spray that, and clients generally will not detect it. So we've done that on internal engagements, but I found a new tool called Spray AD that runs in Cobalt Strike real easily because long story short, if you've heard of LD preload, Go based binaries, LD preload doesn't work on those. You'd have to recompile or do different things, and it's just not worth it. So yeah, use a Cobalt Strike tool. Spray AD is really nice. It allows you to give a single password, and if you are in a SIM breach on a computer, it'll actually pull all the users, test the passwords, and you generally will not be caught. So yeah, you'll get that. You want to also make sure that your SIM is looking for that 4771 because it like Kerberoasting, it contacts the KDC, it requests that ticket granting ticket, and if it passes the status and restriction checks, then you get that ticket for the user, and you're able to get that password. And the event ID for that is 4768 authentication ticket granted. So take a look. Make sure that you are detecting pre-authentication password spraying and not just regular password spraying. Have it in your SIM. That is, I think, that for that one. It's very quick. And then kind of one thing I want to go back to.
You say it's very quick, but I know if you're out there taking notes, you weren't the only one, because I'm listening to you talk like, yeah, that's some good stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, if you want to talk to me more in depth and slower, I'm on the Red Siege Discord. We'll give our deets after this. I've got a lot to share. I've had some great mentors, and that's the big thing about the pen testing community is there are always people that know everything more than you. Do not be intimidated. Learn from people, ask people, find a good community. We're in our Discord. If you put a question there, we will do our best to answer it, or message me on Discord or LinkedIn, and I'll talk through anything with you. The people in my day life don't talk this stuff, so I got to get it out somehow. Just ask me questions. But there's a couple more things to talk about for internal, something for coercing passwords. You have Cisco Smart Install, allows you to get a copy of the config or the startup config that was last sent via TFTP. So if that port is open on your servers, we can then pull those encrypted hashes from your Cisco servers. If you're using type 7 encryption, which can be, I think it's type 7, can be reversed, or is it type 9? Type 7.
It's easy loaded into John too. Yeah.
It's very quick to reverse that. There's a cryptographic flaw with it. So if you have type 7 passwords in your configs, the pro tip, check for that in all your configs, then we will get that. It's reversible because we know the key. Thank you, Tim. And so yeah, we'll get that password, and generally that'll have enhanced access in the network above user level, or access to, say, a core router where you can dump things in the domain controller context or subnet. So Cisco Smart Install, ensure that port is in the 5,000 range. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it's out there. Look for it. There's lots of Gits. And then there's CUCM Thief or different tools that will pull from your CUCM or your Cisco Unity server. You either, pointing, if we find via looking at websites inside or looking through OSINT that you have Cisco Unity, we will run that and it'll brute force through and it'll pull all of the configs from the CUCM. And generally we will find an Active Directory password and it will be a privileged user or a domain admin on the CUCM server. So, I recommend if you do have that, pull that, don't have those hard-coded configs in there, or create a non-privileged user account for your CUCM. And then I think there was one other thing about internal, but I can't remember.
Yeah. So yeah, in general, you kind of I'll just run with it. So there's like some other like video and telecom stuff. It kind of falls into in general, when you think about the person that's responsible for, your internal video conferencing software or the person that's responsible for setting up your phones, they're probably a little bit different breed than your typical sysadmin, and they're definitely different from like true security focused people, right? Like people are on the phones all the time, so definitely functionality is something that they're prioritizing above all else. And a lot of like, you talk about your IoT stuff and telecom stuff and cameras, a lot of it kind of runs on like manufacturer managed platforms. Like it's really uncommon stuff a lot of times. And because of that, it's often overlooked by security people. There was definitely an engagement over the last year where, there was some video conferencing software and we were able to remote SSH into it, which is fine, right? You think about it's just a low, it records audio, except they had one of these devices in their boardroom, right? So we could have theoretically, as an attacker, recorded, their board having conversations. So definitely, be mindful of all IP devices, not just your servers, not just your workstations, but definitely your telephony, your video, your printers and switches, and all that stuff. Yeah, because all these things, there's continuous exploits for it. A lot of times, it was when it was designed, it was never supposed to be on a network at all, and now it is, and we just exploit that stuff to pieces, and we're definitely going to keep that going in the next year.
Yeah. So speaking of, just wanted to touch on a couple more things. I guess it's not OSINT, but internal OSINT. We're able to. One of the things that we had is zone transfers, which is being able to dump all of your domain stuff. If we get all the domain names and we find things that look sensitive, we're going to pull that, and we're looking at the IP ranges. We will use tools such as Eyewitness from 40 North. There's also a Go Witness version, but we like Eyewitness better, and 40 North is awesome. It essentially will go through your network scan to pull your XML from your Nmap scan, and it'll go through, it'll pull those headers, it'll take a screenshot of every web page internally, and then it'll categorize and identify for the common ones like Dell iDRAX or things or printers. It'll tell you exactly what kind of server that is, and then it'll give you the password for it. So a lot of the times we'll go in and we'll just say we'll just go Nmap scan, Eyewitness, and then on bigger ones you can use Eyeballer, which is a like a MI or MLAI thing with weights, I believe, from Bishop Fox, who are also awesome. And that will take very big ranges and put it against different weights to use, ML to figure out exactly what is in that screenshot. So really cool chain for discovery, but you should be able to see any and all websites that you have internally. You should not just look for patches, but look for what's available. And then going back to OSINT, we didn't talk about Census. There are free tools such as Census Search that allow us to look, and we have things like we'll use Subfinder that I mentioned previously to pull your domains, but it'll actually tell us when you register your certificates for your internal stuff. If we look up your company name, we could find your internal domain name scheme. We could find that you're using Rapid7. We could find that you're using Splunk because you've registered that internal host name and it's now publicly available. So we're going to find, we're going to find what exposed ports you have. We're going to find what you have, whether it's Shodan or Census, based on just your IP ranges or your host name. So ensure that you're not naming the host name for, what you're using. And some of it's not always right, but just, be wary what you're leaving hanging around, because we'll find it. That's our job.
We're gonna dig it up.
We're gonna find your junk.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to the end. I don't know if Jaycon wants to hop back in. We'll do some Q&As. We gotta go back and look at what memes have been posted in the Discord.
Yeah, I'm sure people got questions because we threw a lot at them. You more than me, but we threw a lot at them.
Yeah, look back. There's a drawing of you as a bank robber, and it's beautiful. Thank you, Trainwreck.
That's automatically the winner. It has to be.
So you tell the guys to just wrap it up at the end so that I can just end the video. Don't go to the questions, and you guys go to the questions. But we're going to do it anyway. It doesn't matter now. So hold on. One of the big ones, it was really early, and you guys get these questions all the time, and I really want to get this done, which is this question. What advice for transitioning your career into pen testing role, coming from sysadmin background, letters, certifications, but having trouble getting into the field? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
So with that, honestly, I think you should be able to get a job. If you want to hit me up offline, we'll go over your resume, we'll go over your LinkedIn. A lot of that, when people are looking for you, you want to maximize your skill tree, or just get into a community, find people who will help pass you around, and go to cons, meet people. That's how Jason met Tim. It's all social. If you have the requisite skills and you show that you're a fast burner, you just need to find people that are looking for those people. And there are plenty of jobs right now. Yeah. Oh, hi, Tim. So just, hit me up after this. But I say the biggest thing is, if you want to get into pen testing and you're having, not specifically you because you have OSCP, one of my go-to recommendations is the Portsfigure Academy, because it is probably one of the best free training labs out there for web. And a lot of people, it's a lot easier to get hired as a singular focused web than it is as a pen tester, because you need to be, that master of all trades. Whereas getting into web and then kind of expanding, I think is a bit of an easier workflow. But yeah, put yourself out there, apply to a lot of places, meet people, get in communities. There's a lot of Slacks or Discords, and just, make friends, because it's a smaller community than you think. And, you just got to put yourself out there.
Anything you want to add to that, Tim?
No, I completely agree with that. I tell my guys, I'm like, hey, if you go to a conference, the most important thing about the conference is the hallway talk, the talks, and I do a lot of talks, so don't like the empty room, but many times those things are recorded later. You can watch them at 50% faster or whatever, skip the beginning, skip the end. I got my first job, not from a conference, but from putting myself out there with blog posts. Jason, we just met randomly. He was doing the interview panel, how to do the interview. Just nailed it. I had no feedback for him, and I told him a couple of years we're going to be chatting and we're going to work together, and it worked out. But you're not going to learn this stuff in a vacuum. Talk to other people. You're going to get input from them. If you're not the big people person face to face, there's still tons of opportunities for Slacks and Discord. But that personal touch from the face to face definitely helps.
Yeah. And then honestly, to how I ended up at Red Siege, I asked one of my good friends, hey, what's a really good small team that I can go to? And Red Siege was his first answer. So, I did. I messaged Tim directly, and I said, hey, if you have time, take a look. So I don't everyone email Tim. It'll take a while for a response, but just kind of putting yourself out there. Sometimes, and I probably shouldn't say this, but going through hiring portals isn't the most effective solution. It's about networking. So don't just email them directly unless you have the creds to back that up. But make those connections, find those people, and if you want to talk things through, I've got a couple places I can recommend for a junior pen tester. So just hit me up, but not everyone. I don't have time for everyone. I'm sorry. I have time for 10. Yeah, 10.
But that's what's important about like things like, you know, I know there's many Discords now, and especially in this space, but like, you know, Discords like ours and a few others where you can just come in, make conversation, talk to people. It's not overbearing. We're not, you know, trying to sell you anything. We really just try to keep it focused on the things that people want to learn. Make yourself known in these spaces. Just kind of ask questions, talk, have fun. Because again, the moment something comes up, people are gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. They've been great in the Discord. That is a leg up that you can have just from interacting on things like that. So, all right. So I guess we're down to the end of this thing. And there's been a lot of good memes and good things. So I think I'm going to do something. I'm going to go ahead and do this without Tim's approval. I'm going to pull 5 people. I'm going to give all of you hats. I'm going to give y'all a whole kit. I'm going to do it up. We're doing it big right now. It's the beginning of 2023, first month, first SiegeCast. So I am going to go ahead and say that Cyberduck, Quincy, even though I know it's gonna be hard to get to you, we're still gonna do it. Catherine, Golgothus, and Trainwrecks, because you buttered me up with mine.
Oh, man.
I need all of you to message Molly at Red Siege. Give her your shirt size, give her your address, Molly at Red Siege, shirt size, address, no matter where it is. Give it to Molly. We will get you guys. You're gonna get a full package for being so engaged in our SiegeCast today. We appreciate you so much for being here. Yeah, you know, I know some of them are gonna be a little harder to get to than others, but we're gonna do it. I appreciate all of you. Appreciate everybody that joined us today. You guys are great. Also, you can also follow Quincy's advice, which is watch all Red Siege content. He says his interview skills have improved over the years, just paying attention to what the guests say. We have this. We've got the Wednesday offensive every Wednesday. We appreciate all of you guys. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up the rest of the year, and we appreciate you being here at the first one of 2023. So again, for the names I mentioned, Cyberduck, Quincy, Catherine, Golgothus, and Trainwrecks. If you've already gotten a free shirt from us, make it known so that way we don't get the same shirt sent to you. Anything else, Tim, before we end this bad boy out? No, Tim? Okay.
Trainwreck, I love that Grinch meme, by the way. Thank you. That made my
Yeah, that was really, really good. You earned that. Appreciate you guys. See ya.